John, thank you so much for being here with me. For those that may not know you, can you make a brief introduction about yourself? And a second part of it is like why or what got you to esports, to the intersection with esports and education?
So right now, I would say the best way to describe me is I'm a parent of a gamer and a previous esports coach, and I'm an assister of esports organizations. So right now I have a project I'm working with one of my previous esports players at Youth Gaming Association, where we create tools for high school and collegiate esports coaches that, lay out the practices you'll do over a season, and they tell you what to do in those practices and whatnot. In addition to that, I've coached teams in the past. I coached at the University of Missouri. We won Overwatch and NACE in, I think it was 2020. And I also won an award for being a Collegiate Esport Advocate of the Year. I think that was 2023, maybe 2022, somewhere around there. So I've been around the esports space for a while. What got me started was back in Overwatch, in the heyday of Overwatch. I was watching a pro, and I noticed like his warm-up routine was really not very good. So I had messaged him and I was like, hey, here's a better warm-up routine for you. And when he started doing it, the other people that watched his stream were pros as well. And so they all started doing it. And then I was like, well, okay, could I make more? And that was for a character called Tracer. And so I made some more for other characters, and it got more and more popular. And what ended up happening is I'm just this average platinum player, but all my friends are like top 500s and pros. And I spent all these times in these lobbies trying to help these players warm up for their game faster. And I made some relationships in there. And one of the relationships I made was a kid on our Orange Coast College team who asked me to come coach for them. Never coached before in my life. And so I learned how to coach, read a bunch of books, and helped them get through a season. And we ended up getting third at nationals, and against, the likes of Maryville and Harrisville and or Harrisburg, and Utah was there. And I was on ESPN with in a documentary. Mizzou saw me. They brought me over to coach for them. And then I worked on the Mizzou program, met Gavin. And now my mission is to help more parents and high school esports coaches understand the benefits of esports beyond just entertainment. For me, I truly, honestly believe that esports of 2030 is going to be what sports were in 1990. And that's when I was coming up, was in 1990. Sports was super important. And I believe as we move forward, a lot of kids are going to be online, and they're going to use these esports programs in order to develop the social skills, and they're going to have online skills and social skills, and they are going to be the leaders of tomorrow.
Amazing. What an introduction.
I mean, like
super complete.
I could do a whole hour probably with just me.
Basically, like I was taking notes, like the main points of the introduction, because I would love to dig in deeper, okay, to what you just mentioned. So first thing is the tools. Can you go a bit deeper into what tools you're developing that you think are essential for those administrators or now like esports coordinators or coaches in the collegiate scene or high school scene?
Yeah, 100%. So when it comes to being, I'm just going to pick a high school esports coach. A lot of times you're voluntold to do it, meaning, hey, I'm a science teacher. The kids want an esports program. Guess what? You're now the esports coach. You don't play any of the games. You're too busy being a teacher. You care too much about kids. You don't really have time to be a gamer, right? What do? At what point do you need resources in order to know how to run a practice? Because when you look at esports, one of the problems with esports historically is first of all, is the definition of esports, right? Because a lot of people think playing video games is esports, and it's not. Playing video games is more like acting, right? There's a difference between acting and playing baseball. They both could be physical. They both take talent. They're all of those things. But kids that are playing video games for entertainment are different from kids that are playing video games to compete. And when you find yourself in a competitive environment where you have to min-max your abilities and work as a team, all of that generates soft skills in you, right? And so what we create is we create the tools to help a teacher navigate a season. So for example, we have a webinar coming up, but the first thing you do is tryouts, right? And if I were to ask you, I'm not sure if you've ever coached before, but what do you think the most important goal of tryouts is?
Basically to assess the the skill of a student?
To a degree, but in a scholastic environment where there's limited resources for players, the number one thing that you want to do is design a team that will survive a season. Because if you just pick the best players, a lot of times the teams don't make it through the season. So you've got like 3 really committed kids and then 2 guys that are buddies that are the best players.
Yeah.
And that's your roster. And those 2 buddies decide they don't want to play anymore. Now you've got 3 kids that are just left in the wind in the middle of a season, right? So a lot of times when you're building those rosters, you want to look for those people. And the reason I say that is because, are you familiar with what a rubric is?
No.
Okay, so a rubric is what teachers generally use to grade papers so the students know what the teachers are going to be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in our rubric that we provide people, there's multiple aspects of being a player on the team. It comes down to communication, their ability to communicate. Can they, do they? Is it positive communication? Mechanics, basically who's got the highest rank or who's the best mouse mover, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got other things like macro knowledge and coachability. Like if you give them feedback, do they take it? Do they apply it? Do they constantly argue? Are they disruptive? Like all of those things are super important when you're building the team because you want your team to survive the season. Now, as a coach, remember, you're just a science teacher. You don't know any of this. You've never even played a video game before, right? And that's week 0. And the whole program is 13 weeks long. So when it comes to week 1, you're like, well, what do we do now? It's like, well, you've got to set up practices. You've got to figure out a way to record your gameplay. And then week 2 is, learn about like Overwatch, for example. I'm not sure what game you play, but Overwatch, for example, you would learn your composition, or Valorant, you'd learn your composition, or like Marvel Rivals or Super Smash Brothers. Like they cover 6 games, and then it just walks you through the course of like a season, 13-week season, to give you information to guide the students. Because you got to remember, you don't play the game. So you're never going to teach the kid how to improve at the game. But what you are going to do is give them purpose. And that's the key for soft skill development, is purpose. They have to have a reason to take action in class or in practice. My apologies. And the key anecdote to that is this. If you take a bunch of 15-year-olds and you put them in a gymnasium and you put sports equipment on the floor, the likelihood that a game breaks out versus kids just throwing things at each other is pretty low. A lot of times the kids they'll just do whatever, right? They'll goof off because they're kids. And the difference is when you have a coach there, they say, no, we're going to practice. For example, I'm going to go to sports and I'm going to use pickleball because I've never played pickleball. We're going to practice serves this week. We're going to practice volleys the next week. We're going to practice, communication the next week. And even though I don't know anything about pickleball, just setting up those purposes and those practices give the kids a direction so they can improve on the things that matter. So over the course of the season, they can learn accountability for their improvement. They can learn humility for where they failed to improve. They can learn communication and teamwork as they're trying to improve as a unit. That's where that purpose comes in and is super, super important.
Amazing. And what's the, why is like a purpose, like, why is like, is it important for like students to know like the why behind every task or decision they take?
Okay. So when it comes to like the practices, it'll probably be easier if I give you a direct analogy. What's your main game? I'm assuming you game. What's your main game?
Well, what is now EA FC, and I play a lot of Rocket League as well.
Okay, so I'll use Rocket League because that'll be a little bit easier for me. But you have boost management, right? Now, let's say you're a science teacher. What do you know about boost management? 0. What do the kids know? They know a lot, right? Yeah. But if the science teacher says, hey, this week the focus is on boost management. Our goal this week is to improve at our boost management. And then there's like the book that they have is free, by the way. There's like 2 pages on boost management and the things that you can do with the kids in order to keep them focused on boost management. And then the next week it's something else. Next week it might be, passing. And the next week it might be cycling. And the next week it might be something else. But the point is that over the course of the season, you're just giving the kids something to focus on. You're not telling them, hey, these are the actions you need to do to improve at boost management. If you need more information, you can buy the stuff, the programs, and it tells you how to do all that stuff. I think it's like $25 a week or something like that. But I don't want cost to be a barrier. So if you take the free book, at a minimum, you're just like, hey, kids, I know you guys know not Rocket League. This week, I want you to work on boost management. These are the things, these are the goals I want you to have for practice. And then at the end of practice, you say, how did you do? And the reason you do that is because that simple directive creates accountability. And if the kids are held accountable for their focus over the course of like 3 or 4 weeks, what will happen is they will start to take pride in their improvement, because the improvement won't be random. The improvement will be structured, and they will understand that they are improving, and they will take pride in that. And then as they take pride in that, like, think about what I just said there, gamers that are proud of themselves, like, that's a real thing. And then as they take pride over the course of the season, then they'll start to want more. So they'll start to work together in order to get better results. And that typically where that purpose kind of comes into play. And now that I'm saying all that, think about this for a second, because I'm gonna walk this all back to where my heart is, right? So you've got all of these kids who are playing all of these games at a young age. And these games are basically just decision management tools. They're making decisions based on mathematical algorithms and information on the screen and communication from their teammates under duress, thousands and thousands of times. They are being trained to think faster than everybody else. That's why they get so bored at school, because they don't think as fast as you can read. They think as fast as you can play a video game. And that is why I think they're going to be the future leaders of tomorrow, which is why I'm super passionate about this project, because if I can help high school teachers provide purpose to these kids, then these kids can get something more rewarding out of the esports experience than just playing the game.
And what was your experience with like the school administration? Because like you just outlined all these benefits that are very clear and make sense, and especially like in the US, like the K-12 space is more open, but like for maybe some in Europe, or I don't know, in other parts of the US where it's not, or states that is not that developed, how can you get that buy-in from the administration? Like mixing, like.
Yeah, so here's the best analogy I can give you. Did you play sports when you were younger, Ivan?
Yeah, tennis.
Tennis. Was your parents proud of you for playing tennis?
Well, yeah, that's how I got to study in the US.
Let's go next step. Did you ever not make the playoffs?
I mean, yes.
Okay, and that season that you didn't make the playoffs, was it a waste of time?
No, of course not.
Why?
Because of all the practice and all the consistency and dedication that I put. My parents just wanted me to, be in the club practicing, and the weekends competing, and like if I won, amazing, and if I didn't, whatever. They just wanted me. Yeah,
that's what esports is. See, a lot of people still see it as like this entertainment video game, but it's not. Those same things you learn from that environment, kids are learning in structured after-school esports. But the huge benefit to it is it's online. So not only are they learning that, they're also learning how to navigate online environments and communities. And that cannot be understated, because as we move forward as a society, that's only going to get bigger. It's not getting smaller. We're not putting that rabbit back in the bag. So if the kids are learning everything that you learned from tennis, even when you were losing, but they're doing it online, and they're learning online social skills, you can understand why I believe what I believe, right? Because when you played tennis, I'm sure some of the people that you played tennis with were amazing people, and they went on to have amazing careers because of the crucible that tennis is, because it forces you to be humble. It forces you to communicate. Like if you say something rude to somebody and you got to see them the next week, you have to own those words, right? And over time, you're just like, well, that's not going to work. And they learn those things. The same thing will happen with esports players. Now, I will say this. I'm going to go off on a little caveat. When the kids play by themselves online, that's the same as you playing tennis on the streets at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night with no adults around. And in those environments, you're usually dealing with hustlers. You're trying to protect yourself from like fights or whatever it may be. And that's what the kids are playing online by themselves are, which is why I'm such a huge proponent for getting this in schools, because kids playing by themselves is part of the problem.
Yeah. And being in a structured environment, with a school supervisor, it's a win-win.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's other benefits. Like I always hear about these other benefits to where it's like the kids will stay in school, they will focus on their grades. There's all of those other benefits that are kind of academic related. My focuses are generally like the development of a gamer. But there's a lot of other like academic benefits that are in a lot of the presentations that I hear as well.
Yeah. And how's your approach or your conversations been with parents? Because like for us, when we work with the students and the families, we have like two extremes. Either the parent that is supportive and even goes to the tournaments with their kid and understands, and it's an amazing opportunity, going to North America and studying. Then we have the parents that are like, what? Like they're ignorant because they lack information and they've never, wanted to ask questions about what they're doing.
Yeah.
To the extent that, talking about Rocket League, professional Rocket League player, that their parents said, yeah, our kid was spending a lot of time in his room, but we didn't know that he was winning money and he was pro, So. Yeah.
But that's okay. So I have two things there. First, the last statement that you made, well, he was winning money. That's the thing. A lot of people see esports as winning money. I don't. I see esports as a vehicle to teach kids soft skills. It doesn't matter if you win money. It doesn't matter if you make the playoffs. It only matters if there's structure and purpose to the activity. You could be a minor or a little league baseball team that wins 4 out of 50 games, and the parents will still think those kids get a rewarding experience. When you have structured esports, it's the same thing. The kids learn the same stuff. Outside of like the physical stuff, everything else is the same. Teamwork, strategy, communication, humility, accountability. So the environment is important. And this is how I usually describe it, because I had to work with a lot of parents at Fellowship Esports. And this is how I usually describe it that helps. First of all, I say, we were like an online YMCA, but I would say this. In America, they have basketball games that are played at street courts at night on Friday nights. And if you go play on those courts regularly, you can make money. And you kind of have to hustle. You got to be afraid of getting jumped or fight or being cheated or stolen or all of that stuff. And you learn all of these skills to navigate that environment while being good at basketball. Or you could go play for Duke. And when you go play for Duke, none of that stuff matters, and you are only focused on developing the skills to be the best at basketball. Teamwork, accountability, camaraderie, practice, consistency, all of those things. And that analogy usually helps parents understand that it's better that they're in a program. Like you have a lot of soccer clubs in Europe. It is much better for a kid to be in a soccer club than to be playing by themselves at 10 o'clock at night on a soccer field for money, essentially, right? Because that environment is much more ruthless than if they were in a soccer club where they had to go to practice at specific times when they didn't want to be there, right? They still had to go. If it's raining, they still have to go. If they've got a homework or whatever, they still have to go. They have to be prepared and manage that responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, but the initial thing is soccer, okay, is healthy, right? And gaming isn't. That's the mentality sometimes from the parents. And I'm like, look, if you play 5-6 hours of soccer, you can get injured, it's all about balance and how you practice.
Okay, but there are, so when you say healthy, the healthiness of soccer has multiple aspects to it. One of it being your physique.
Yeah.
Well, we always talk to our kids about staying in shape, because in these games, you have to A, not have a foggy mind so you can make decisions within milliseconds, and B, you've got to have the physique in order to respond in milliseconds, right? So ultimately, we do ask our kids to be physically in shape and prepared when they play. Like that is something that we ask for. And I've actually found over time that the kids that have a healthy physique are more consistent because they don't have the ups and downs of kids with unhealthy physiques. And they don't have the habits of kids with unhealthy physiques, if that makes sense. So today, you may see gamers kind of all over the spectrum, but I think as we move forward, you're going to see it kind of narrow down because the ability to stay focused and clear-headed so you can make those decisions and make those reactions, the physique is going to come down, or at least I would say it wouldn't be extremely unhealthy. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So like when I talk to parents, these are the things I talk about. Plus you also have to remember, I'm a parent, right? Mm-hmm. So when that carries a lot of weight, and I raised a gamer, right? So what are they going to do? Not let their kid play? Like ever? Are they going to tell the kid they can't play? Well, you know what's going to happen? This kid's going to move out and he's going to go play video games because it's what they love. And as a parent, okay, so maybe I do have other things I say. As a parent, I use esports as the vehicle to teach my kid something. So like, if I want to teach my kid a life lesson, right? Are they going to listen to me when I'm trying to teach a life lesson while they're doing laundry? Or are they going to listen to me when I'm trying to teach them a life lesson while they're doing their favorite thing? One of the things about esports is in order to be reactive, it's important that you don't have a lot on your mind. We always ask our players to get their homework done before they even play, to get their chores done before they even play, to have water at their desk, use their bathroom, take a shower, and sleep the night before on game day. The reason is because if they come in and their room's messy or they haven't eaten and they got to get up mid-match and go to the bathroom, they're not focused on winning. And the team that they're playing probably is. So it's important that they manage their outside of the game life in order to give them the best inside of the game opportunity. So as a parent, for me, I can provide my kid with better life skills through esports because she wants to win, right? So she's willing to do anything to win. Whereas, you know, if I tell her, oh, you got to cook dinner, and then during dinner I try to teach her a life lesson, she's like, Dad, I don't really like cooking all that much, you know? So she's just gonna be like, whatever. But if I'm like, hey, you can win this next match if you learn how to listen through the noise, okay? And this is something that I actually teach the kids. So when you're playing esports, a lot of times your anxiety levels rise quite a bit, right? And if you get eliminated or someone scores a goal and it's not what you expected, you get really frustrated. And when you get frustrated, your communication kind of gets not as clean, right? So when you're a teammate of that, if you respond to emotion with emotion, then the relevance of the information gets lost. So what I taught my daughter was listen through the noise. If somebody comes at you with a ton of emotion, it doesn't matter because there's still tactical information buried in there somewhere. Listen to the tactical information, make your decisions and move forward. Don't let their emotions change you. And it's been a massive impact to her when she's online, when she's at school, or even when she's out in public. Because if somebody's mad or angry, it doesn't get her mad or angry. It doesn't even get her defensive. She listens through the noise and she's like, oh, it seems like the door's locked. Right? And like that life skill, I can't teach her doing laundry. I can only teach that life skill in an environment where she cares about improving. So if you have a kid who cares about improving at video games, use the video games as the vehicle so the kid can learn soft life skills because they need them to be good at the video game anyway.
If you want to get their attention, get them with what they're passionate about. Yeah,
100%. I mean, and that's it's a parent thing, right? In our space, in the esports space, there's not a lot of people my age with kids my age. In the next 5 or 10 years, there will be, and they will start to understand these things that I'm saying now because I've lived through this, right? And the best analogy I can give you is this: if you've got a Rocket League roster, and somebody's toxic on the roster, I mean, you may ask them to change, but if they don't change, what do? You replace them, right?
Yeah.
I can't replace my kid. Like, I can't be like, hey, you're off the team, you know? So I had to like go in and actually figure out how to address the issue and fix the issue. And I did. And I learned that at Fellowship Esports. And then I want to amplify it. And I want to teach more people what I know. And I'm doing that through Youth Gaming Association.
And it's also very valuable for collegiate coaches because they're also not recruiting or doing tryouts for a split, it's for 4 years. And all that you mentioned, right, is super important.
So. Oh, definitely. And I would say when it comes to collegiate, think about it from like a base level, right? So I know everybody likes to think they're a GM as a coach, right? I'm just going to use video game levels, but they're not an iron coach. But the reality is when you go up through the ranks, you essentially learn fundamentals as you go. Mm-hmm. And so with the books that we put together, it's all based on fundamentals. So you may know in depth about some of the aspects in the book or one of the aspects in the book. Like you may be pro level knowledgeable on boost management, right? But there's other aspects in that book that you may not be pro level knowledgeable at. And it's important that throughout the course of the season, you cover all of this information. So that way, even in collegiate, the kids can progress. If you were on a football team, right? Or even tennis, I'll use tennis because that's what you did. At some point, you're going to have practices around serving. At some point, you're going to have practices around doubles or cross court. I don't know anything about tennis, like cross court or backhands or whatever, all of the little things that you need to learn how to do. And even in collegiate, this stuff is really, really important. Now, most of the kids have kind of developed their character for the most part. You can help shape them a little bit more, but usually by the time you get them in collegiate, they're not going to change too much as individuals. So really in collegiate, it's more, especially in the U, it's more about having like a roadmap for your season. And it's not like, okay, kids, come in. Okay, go play your game. Okay, you're not doing good enough because you're not winning. Like, I mean, that there's no structure to that. And nobody here. One of the analogies I like to give is this, or one of the idioms I like to give is this. We call them speakeasyisms. Is if you practice goofing off, you get really good at goofing off. And you'll know this because you played Rocket League. If you play a worse opponent, you start to mess around. You're like, oh, maybe I can hit the ball over here, do this, do this, do this. And you're basically practicing goofing off. And what that turns into is in a close game, you start goofing off and you lose momentum. And then
you start getting nervous.
Then the reverse sweep comes in, right? So you started goofing off and the reverse sweep comes in. But guess what you're not practiced at doing? Your fundamentals. You're practiced at goofing off. So now you can't lock back in on the skills that you had that made you good in the first place. You can really only keep doing the goofing off stuff. And you end up losing these important games, right? And so, yes, there are levels to the depth at which our information can be applied. However, I always recommend start at the base level because a lot of folks don't realize what they don't know. And once they start at the base level, it starts to become apparent what they don't know. And the easiest thing to do is, hey, if you're going to have a practice on like an Overwatch, right? That was the game I coached. There's a composition called Dive. When you have a practice where the kids are playing Dive, and they're like, well, we don't want to play this anymore because people are countering us. It's like, well, yeah, but that's the point. How do you play Dive against its counters? So if Dive becomes meta throughout the course of the season, are you just going to say, well, we're going to quit for the year? No, you got to learn the composition. You got to spend a little bit of time playing it and understanding how it works and understanding the engagements in and out and stuff like that. And that's kind of the purpose instead of, hey, sit down and just grind. Okay, sit in your chair and grind. Like that, honestly, that's not coaching. That's just management.
Yeah. Well, okay. No. Super interesting.
There's a lot.
It's a lot to, it's a lot to process, but super valuable. Yeah. And your community, your kids' community, what are the ages? Because you talk about a lot about high school. Are they in the high school ages?
Okay, so the again, Fellowship Esports is on pause right now, but that was 13 to 18. So those were the kids that I focused on. Those were the parents that I focused on helping. And I can tell you, of the parents I talked to, 50% of them put the kids in our program. So the parents entrusted us with kids, and of those parents, every single one of them rated us 5 stars out of 5. Because
sorry.
Yeah, because they would. One of them came to me and actually said this. They said, where I come from in Ukraine, they said it takes a village to raise a kid. That's the philosophy that we take over there. And she said, John, you are my online village. And if that gives you any sense on my approach towards esports, to me, it's really important to let these kids thrive in the environment and be kids. However, give them some semblance of like responsibility and all of that stuff so they can develop. So thrive and develop, and that's generally how that community works. The Youth Gaming Association, that's what makes tools for like teachers and coaches. And again, they're priced under what they should be, in my personal opinion, but they're priced in order to like, so people can just get them and do this stuff and start to impact these kids' lives. Like, so if there's anybody out there thinking of it, I highly recommend just try it out. Just try one. And when you look at it, you're going to read it and you're going to be like, well, I know all of this. And then it's like, yeah, but when you go through a practice and that's the focus, the entire practice, you're going to quickly learn what you don't know. Because trust me, even pros, me as a plat, coaching pros, I even showed them things that they didn't know. And I'm just a plat player because my focus is being a good coach, not being a good FPS player, not being a good Rocket League player. My focus is on the team, on the development as a whole, on communication, on the way they treat each other, how they navigate emotional situations. And that's really where I'm trying to lead all of this.
Amazing. And so just to repeat again, if I understood, like for teachers that maybe don't have any knowledge of video games, like your tools can be very beneficial to them, because like the students, like they know about the game, and the teachers is about like teaching them the fundamentals. Did I have it right?
Yeah, but I would say I would caveat that and say I coached kids at a championship level, and I mean all of this material comes from that. It's that, like I said, there's like layers to it. So even if you are a collegiate coach and you were top 500 at your game, right? That means you're really good at the game. That doesn't really mean you're a top 500 coach. I'm going to be honest, right? Just because you're good at the game doesn't mean you're a good coach. And we give the structure to be a coach, because in our philosophy is you either got 20-year-olds that are focused on the game, or you've got 35-year-olds that are focused on development. And our tools will help both. The mindset tools will help the 20-year-old and help them navigate throughout a course of a season, plus give them structure and direction for the team for like improvement. And then for the 35-year-olds, it gives the kids purpose so they don't have to master the game. So it's a tool for either, to be honest with you. I mean, like if you just wanted to put together a roster tomorrow, you could take our 13-week program and run the kids through it. And at the end of it, I don't know what caliber of Rocket League player you were, but at the end of it, you're going to be like, oh yeah, okay, this makes total sense, because now the kids are improving at all of the fundamental aspects of the game, and they are going to take that knowledge and be creative with it. Because I guess we're going to leave this near the tip of it. This is really gold, though. The reality is, in video games, you can't teach knowledge transfer because it causes cognitive delay. So if I teach you, and I'll use Marvel Rivals, a game I don't play. If I teach you that Hero A up against Hero B counters them, so if you hear this sound, you need to do this action and hide in this location. If I teach you that knowledge, generally what happens is in those environments, you have to think about that knowledge. So best example could be, if I peek a corner, do I aim for the head or do I aim for the chest, right? And so if I'm telling you what to do constantly, then you're thinking about what I'm saying. You're not thinking about what you're doing. So in video games, you really have to coach reaction, not coach information. And the way that you coach reaction is you build fundamental knowledge, and then you put the players in the environment to leverage that fundamental knowledge. And then as they're leveraging that fundamental knowledge, they will trial and error specific things. And then when they learn something in that environment, it'll be reactive, not thought processed. So you won't have people, and I'm not sure if you've ever seen this before, but you'll see people kind of like pause when they're playing. Like they'll be playing and they'll be like, oh, what was I supposed to do there? And they'll say that like mid-match. And you're like, hey, in video games where reaction times are in the milliseconds, you can't do that. You can't stop. You can't pause to think. So again, lots to this. Apologies
No,
if I'm
no,
going down a lot of
no, because like, and I was thinking back in the day, in my teenagers, when I was playing like mostly tennis, and I had a coach that asked me like the questions and made me like come up on my own time and reaction, like what I did wrong. And then when I was playing with other kids without the coach, okay, I could play no problem. I can do a match. And there were kids that when the coach wasn't telling them what they were doing wrong, and they were like in game day, they were lost, they were inconsistent because they didn't have their coach telling them what to do. So yeah, it made me like think of a throwback.
Yeah. So, and for what it's worth, my dad was an athletic director at high school, right? So, or junior high, I'm not even sure. He was an athletic director, and a lot of what I've learned is what I've come from me watching him with kids, right? And the reality is that how you react in the moment is defined by how you reacted in the moment previously, and if you think you need to do something different or not. And that's what VOD reviews are for, right? When you watch a VOD review, it takes you out of the emotion of the moment. So you never argue about strategy in the moment because everybody's energy and everybody's emotions are high, right? You want to talk about strategy in VOD reviews. I had a golf pro teach me golf, and he said, you always practice at the range and play on the course. When you're in game, you play reactively. The moment that you start turning it into an intellectual campaign, you're going to slow down, you're going to lose momentum, you're going to fall out of focus. So it's those, again, this is why I recommend using the tools, because those are things that a coach can develop in the players to where like, what's your lineup on Brim for Valorant? It's like, I mean, you could Google that. You could watch that on YouTube and master that in 3 minutes. Like, that's not going to change the outcome of your season. The ability to like talk to your teammates is going to change the outcome of your season. The ability for you to persevere a bad loss. Here's another thing that we always talk about, like tilt, right? We've been able to define tilt as misplaced expectations. So like you get frustrated if you have expectations of me coming into this and I'm not what you expected. Or if you expect your teammate to pass you the ball in Rocket League, but he doesn't, you're like, what are you doing? And then he doesn't do it like 5 or 6 times. Now you don't trust him. Now you're a little frustrated. Now you're playing differently and he's playing differently. Now all the fundamentals are out the window. And we call that like solo queue mindset, where you go from this team coordinated thing that you've been practicing to a solo queue mindset. Now you're practicing solo queue mindset. Well, the reason I bring all of that up is that when it comes to like tilt and frustration, that is something that you can counteract before it even starts. And one of the things that I like to do is I always ask the players, I'm like, hey, how many games of the 13 we play this season do you think we're going to win? And they're like, 13. And I'm like, I love it. But let's be real here. Do you really think we're going to go undefeated? And they're like, well, maybe not. Maybe we'll lose a couple. I'm okay. So let's say we win 11. We're still going to lose 2. So you know that there's going to be some losses in your future. So when you have those losses, you can't get down. It can't change the way you practice because you know they're coming. You got to play through the losses. Now, how many rounds are we going to lose? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I mean, you lose rounds every game. And I'm like, yeah. So we're going to lose like 50 rounds. So when you lose a round, you can't stop what you're doing. You can't give up on your fundamentals. You got to play through the lost round. And how many times do you think you're going to die? And I'm using Valorant as an example, but how many times do you think? And I don't know, hundreds. Right. So every time you die, you can't cry about it. You can't stop what you're doing. You can't stop communicating. You've got to play through all of that adversity because there's a lot of games. There's a lot of rounds. There's a long season, right? And our goal is to break the board, which is an analogy that we use, to make it through the season. Because something I learned in Taekwondo is if you hit the board, it hurts. If you break the board, it doesn't. So you have to swing through the board instead of swing at the board.
Yeah, it's like going back to tennis, like when you see the stats of the players, and even if it wasn't a close match, but you see like the winner, how many points they lost or how many games they lost in a set. Okay, it's like, it's all about consistency, or like, where like most of the points were lost due to errors. Like it's always be consistent. All this is just going back to the basics and being consistent. Yeah. I mean,
now I'm gonna take that to the next level, right? Because I always talk about the future leaders of the world. Now think about it. You've got these kids at 13 grinding through these games, and they learn the ability not to get shuttered when they take a loss. And they stay true to their fundamentals, and they keep practicing to maximize their potential. And you've got thousands upon thousands of those kids that are good online that have all of those skills. I'm gonna tell you what, man, that there isn't a better army of kids that, you know, corporate America would never ask for, right? And they know meta, right? Like I taught my kid meta, and she gets A's in her classes, not because she's a genius, but because she learns what the teacher wants, and she gives the teacher exactly what the teacher wants. Not really anything more, just enough to get what she needs to get out of that class. And I know that's maybe not the best learning system, but in real life, the ability to give people what they want without over investing into it, into things that they don't want, that's a great skill to have, right? And that's her motif. So, and she learned that from video games, from understanding what the meta is, min-maxing what her strategies are in order to get the best outcome.
Amazing. John, before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to mention that we didn't talk about? Well, actually, that you didn't talk about, because like I've been all the time like listening to you and then processing, and I'm like, okay, from everything you mentioned, what can I ask? You know, like it's been a lesson for me, basically. So I'm deeply appreciative for that. Yeah. So
I would say this. I would say if you've made it this far and you run teams, you know, connect with YGA. I don't know if we can put a link somewhere or something. We have a seminar coming up, or a webinar coming up. It's free, and it's about tryouts, right? And in there, I've been working with the creator of the webinar about how rubrics are set up and how to leverage them in order to create the best teams. Because that is the quintessential part of a season, is the quality of your roster. You know, you can look at soccer. You're in the EU, you can look at soccer. People can go out and spend billions of dollars, right? That doesn't guarantee a championship, right? Because in the end, it's the roster that comes together and they play together, right? And the outcome comes there. So if they have the opportunity to come to the webinar, I think you would learn a lot, no matter the level of coach that you are. I mean, even if you're a semi-pro to pro coach, as you can find, you know, I've worked with a lot of them too. So there's a lot in what we put together that could be super useful for folks.
Amazing. We'll put the link, and for sure, like, hope the webinar, guys. Okay, John, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much for your time, and for sure, you added a lot of value to the people.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about the things